They never thought I would fight back. That was their first mistake. I had been working on the project for years, quietly building it in the shadows of late nights and stolen hours. It wasn't just a business idea, it was the culmination of everything I had ever believed in, every ounce of ambition I had carried since I was a child staring out of a window at a world that felt too far away. I poured myself into it, believing that when the time was right, it would be my voice, my vision, that finally made people listen. But I trusted the wrong people. At first, it was all excitement and shared dreams. We would sit around worn-out tables in coffee shops, sketching blueprints on napkins, scribbling phrases in notebooks, and convincing each other that we were on the brink of something extraordinary. I opened my heart too wide, let them see the inner workings of my mind, believing in loyalty where there was none. I didn't notice the glances they exchanged when I spoke. I didn't hear the quiet calculations behind their laughter. The day it happened, I knew something was wrong before I even opened my email. There was a tension in the air, a silence that wrapped itself too tightly around me. When I finally saw the announcement, the press release with their names stamped in bold at the top and my ideas stripped bare beneath them, I felt the kind of betrayal that doesn't burn but freezes. My chest tightened. My throat closed. I wasn't even mentioned, not in the acknowledgments, not in the footnotes, not in a whisper. They had erased me. For days, I drowned in anger. Sleep came in broken fragments, food turned to ash in my mouth. Everyone told me to move on, to let it go, that the world wasn't fair. But they didn't understand. This wasn't just about an idea. This was about my life, my future, stolen right out from under me. And if they could take it from me so easily, then what did I have left? That was when I made a decision. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten. I didn't even confront them. I smiled when I passed them in the street, nodded politely when I saw them on television talking about their vision. Inside, though, I was hollowing out the part of myself that once believed in mercy. They had taken my idea, so I would take something from them in return. Something they would never get back. I watched them carefully. I learned their patterns. Success makes people careless. It dulls the senses, makes them believe they are untouchable. While they basked in applause, I stayed quiet in the shadows, listening, recording, gathering. Every mistake they made, every flaw in their plan, I collected it like broken glass, sharp and waiting to be used. It wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about balance. They had rewritten my story without my consent. So I rewrote theirs. Slowly, methodically, I pulled at the seams of everything they had built. I fed information into the right hands, whispered doubts to the right ears, exposed truths that were never meant to see the light. A rumor here, a leaked file there. Nothing that could be traced back to me. Nothing that looked like more than coincidence. At first, no one noticed. Their companies still gleamed, their names still shone. But foundations rot from the inside before the walls collapse. Investors grew hesitant. Partners pulled away. Whispers of misconduct grew louder, more dangerous. And the three of them, the ones who had smiled as they took everything from me, began to unravel. I watched it happen. I watched the cracks spread across their lives. Not just their work. Friendships frayed, families fractured, trust dissolved. They had stolen my idea, but I had stolen their certainty, their future, their belief that they could ever win without consequence. The final blow came quietly, just as it had for me. A single article, tucked into the corner of a paper, exposing the truth they thought they had buried. Within days, everything collapsed. The empire they built on my idea was nothing more than ash. Their names became warnings, not praises. And me? I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I simply walked away, carrying the silence of justice like a cloak. They would never know how much of their ruin had my fingerprints on it. They would never understand how far I had gone to make sure they felt what I had felt. They stole my idea. So I stole their future. And in the end, that felt like enough. They thought it ended there, that once the company crumbled, the nightmare would fade. But they never understood me. They thought I was like them, driven by greed, desperate for recognition, satisfied with petty victories. They couldn't imagine that I wasn't after applause or headlines. I wanted something far deeper, something that would keep them awake at night long after the dust of their downfall had settled. I wanted them to feel powerless. Powerlessness is the most exquisite punishment. It lingers, it corrodes, it doesn't need a prison to contain you. I knew how to give it to them, because I had lived it myself, staring at the wreckage of my stolen dream. They had left me in the dark, stripped of everything, but I had learned that the dark can be a weapon. In the dark, no one sees you coming. So, even after their company collapsed, I didn't stop. I waited until they tried to rebuild. They always do. People like them don't know how to live without control, without something to manipulate. One tried to launch a new startup, another tried consulting, the third clung to public speaking, pretending to be some kind of guru of innovation. They wanted to start over, to reinvent themselves. And I was already there. The moment they reached for a lifeline, I cut it. Investors pulled out at the last second, clients mysteriously vanished, and even their most loyal supporters began to question them. Every move they made was shadowed by doubt, and they couldn't understand why the world seemed to conspire against them. That was the beauty of it. I was the ghost in their machine, invisible but always present. I didn't need to destroy them all at once. I wanted them to break piece by piece, until they couldn't recognize the faces staring back at them in the mirror. Until they wondered whether it was luck, or fate, or some curse that followed them everywhere. And sometimes, just sometimes, I let them feel hope. I let them get close to something, close enough to believe they had escaped, close enough to taste success again. That was when I pulled it away. That was when I reminded them that everything they touched would rot. I never revealed myself. That was the part that made it unbearable for them. They couldn't fight what they couldn't see. There was no enemy to confront, no villain to blame. Only shadows and silence, the slow decay of everything they tried to build. Years passed, and they grew older, heavier with the weight of failures they could never explain. Their names became nothing more than echoes, mentioned in the same breath as frauds and failures. Friends avoided them, colleagues ignored them, and the world forgot them. They had stolen my future, but I had stolen time itself from them, one failure at a time. Sometimes, late at night, I imagine them sitting alone in their homes, staring at their empty phones, wondering where it all went wrong, wondering if they had made a single mistake too many, if they had trusted the wrong people, if perhaps fate had always been against them. And then, I imagine the moment when the thought slips into their minds, quiet, uninvited, impossible to shake. What if someone did this to us on purpose? That's when I smile, because they'll never know for sure. They'll never see me coming. And that's the true revenge. They never stopped looking over their shoulders. At first, they thought it was coincidence. Businesses fail all the time. Deals collapse. People move on. They convinced themselves that it was just bad luck, that the world had shifted under their feet and they hadn't adapted quickly enough. But the pattern was too precise, too cruel. Every time they tried to rise, they fell harder. Every time they extended their hand for help, it was slapped away. And when people fall often enough, paranoia takes root. I didn't have to touch them anymore. They began tearing themselves apart, turning on each other, accusing one another of betrayal. I only had to drop the smallest hints, an anonymous message here, a misplaced document there, and their fragile alliances shattered. The same trust they had stolen from me, I shattered between them until each one believed the other two were the cause of their downfall. It was beautiful in its inevitability. One of them drank too much, drowning the silence with bottles that never emptied fast enough. Another chased investments overseas, running from failure, but carrying it with him like a shadow, until no one would return his calls. The last clung to a crumbling marriage, watching his family slip further away as the weight of disgrace consumed him. But I wasn't finished. They thought the past was buried, but I unearthed it piece by piece. Old emails resurfaced. Forgotten debts appeared in the wrong hands. Whispers of misconduct, of backroom deals, of stolen ideas. My idea spread like poison. They had no way to defend themselves, no way to clear their names. People didn't care if the rumors were true. The suspicion was enough. And still, I never stepped into the light. That was the most important rule. My power came from silence, from the fact that they never knew where the next strike would come from, or if it would come at all. I let them destroy themselves with suspicion, let them rot in the prison of their own minds. The years were unkind to them. Their hair thinned, their faces hardened, their voices grew hollow. I saw them sometimes, at conferences they weren't invited to speak at, in cafes where they sat alone, in news articles that spoke of their failures with a hint of mockery. Once I even walked past one of them on the street. He looked straight through me, eyes vacant, lost in a world that had chewed him up and spat him out. He didn't recognize me. He didn't even remember the face of the person whose life he had stolen. But I remembered. I remembered every word they had spoken the night they cut me out, the laughter in their voices, the certainty that I was too small, too naive, too weak to fight back. That memory burned in me for years, shaping me, sharpening me, until I became something they could never imagine, a shadow sharp enough to cut. And in the end, that was the sweetest part of it all. They wanted the world to remember them, to celebrate them, to carve their names into history. Instead, they became ghosts, forgotten, disgraced, irrelevant. I didn't just steal their future. I erased their legacy. And now, when I walk through the city where their empire once stood, I feel nothing but silence. A silence I created. A silence that belongs to me. Because they stole my idea, and I stole everything else.